Welcome to the 1916 Company. I'm Tim Mosso, your host. This is Watches Tonight. This evening, I detail how I would rebuild my watch collection. We chat live and I share your wrist chats tonight on Watches Tonight. I see Edward Ledden from Sweden in the box. Soma R joining in from Europe. Welcome, guys. Thanks to one and all. I just love it when all the tech works right out of the gate. While we are warming up, do me a favor, check me out on Instagram at Tim_Mosso. By the way, I just posted that Gyro Tourbillon 2 video. It's super close up and you can see all the good stuff. This is a channel where you can see maybe 2% of the life and times of Tim Mosso and 98% awesome watches with very little filler. It's all thriller. So check out Tim_Mosso on Instagram and you can daisy chain my 3,000 1-minute videos. We got Slowboy Fuel Pump joining in. We got Andrew T, Dr. Kevin Moore from Bloomington, Indiana, Mark S from Brooklyn, Jim Millett from the UK, Rob Filmer from Chicago, 911 Euro from Winter Park, Florida. Jens is joining in from the home of Zinn in Frankfurt. We've got Michael Everywhere, who is actually in one specific place, Manhattan. And we got Watch Out, just getting off work and listening to Tim. A good evening, guys. It will be a great evening. Thanks to one and all who joined. And we had a question from Andrew T asking, did the lighting change? Nick, did the lighting change? Nope, I don't think so. But I'm glad it looks good. Anyway, Decibels from DC and Dr. Stu in the box. Lots of friends, including Brian Scott, staying up late in Northern Ireland. Wrist shots number one, I asked, you answered. We've got Dr. Ben, who rolls with the double-wristed Patek Philippe 5500 Pagoda in his Bentley Bentayga SUV. That is awesome. Jeff S., another good friend and a longtime supporter, with his Breguet Tradition 7597 retrograde date, drinking in elite company with 23-year Pappy Van Winkle. Even the sleeve is luxurious. Michael R. tracks 2 time zones with his Patek Philippe 5524G Calatrava travel time, which, if the rumors are to be believed, has been discontinued for 2025. We've got John D. of Garden City, New York, who shares his German car and an American-inspired Swiss watch, which I love. That's the Apollo 17 right there. We got Brent and Lisa, who visit Switzerland's Mount Schilthorn with Tissot and Omega. Good job, guys. That is an epic wrist shot, a double wrist shot. Not necessarily a him and hers, because I don't think they're married, but a very cool double. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com to see your watches in this box. We got Aristocratic from Asheville, North Carolina. We got Leo joining in from Milan. Leonardo, welcome, my man. Cull Obsidian. We've got Neil Benham joining in saying, don't know how I got here, but happy to be here. Dr. Ben from Naples. Good to see my friend there. We got Ben1971 joining in from Portugal. We've got Jimu joining in, a horology aficionado by his own declaration. Mr. Wong, welcome. And Joe Tyson, a longtime supporter from Apex, North Carolina. Austin Finch from Phoenix in the great American Southwest Desert. Miles Fisher, hey Tim from LA. You're a good man and a great American. Well, I don't claim to be either, but I appreciate the support. And then we've got Rich Mitch joining in from Newcastle, New England, and Jackson Evans, first time catching one live. Jackson, thank you so much for joining in. So, tonight's theme, if I were to rebuild my watch collection, which is more than a hypothetical because I do this for a living and it's always on my mind. So I've accumulated a few watches in recent years, but I haven't really considered that to be collecting. Transactions with friends, a few gifts, things that aren't as considered and thoughtful and maybe conscious as collecting. Accumulation is what I would call it. So I haven't been a focused or committed collector since 2018, when I thought I was basically on my last legs in the watch industry, lost interest, lost the passion, ready to get out and move on. And I thought education was the direction I was going. I sold my watches, all but my Snowdrop Memovox, my vintage piece. And guys, I wound up sticking around. Cases were made to my face, and I took the folks here at face value that they wanted to make me part of the long-term plans, and they were as good as their word. So here I am now, and it's 7 years later. We really have to think about where I'm going to go with my watch collection, because it's hard to live in the midst of all this without being a part of all this. So most of you have given me a pass for sitting on the sidelines all these years, and I've never felt less a member of the watch community for my lack of purchases. That said, many of you have asked when I plan to return to the hobby in earnest, Mark S., especially you, And it's never far from my mind, so recognizing that the time will come, and hopefully sooner rather than later, I've spent some energy today considering what forms my future collection might take. Here's some insights into what I'm thinking. And remember, one conclusion I reached from my JLC days was that I didn't want to be a mono-brand collector, that was the wrong direction, and I needed to focus more on individual watches that I really like. I would also say regular viewers tend to know what's on my radar, so I'm going to add a few targets tonight that might be a surprise even to those of you who are regulars in the box and tend to know my tastes quite well. So, jumping into the box one more time. Mark S. saying, I have not given Tim a pass for sitting on the sidelines. Yeah, I beat you to it, but I know it's true. Dad, can I borrow the watch? Reporting in from Florida. We got a lot of supporters from Florida. I like that. Jim Mild saying, DB on Tim's wrist has to happen. Well, first a note about Grail watches. Ultra watches and exit watches, specifically for Jim, apparently. I can't do any more than fantasize about things costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even if I could swing one of them, that would put paid to the notion of a collection of watches. I think after you have one watch that costs 150 grand, that's pretty much your watch budget for a while, maybe forever. And then you could have one $600,000 watch or an unimaginably cool collection. Some people don't have to choose. I probably couldn't choose either in that case. Before we get to the real aspirations of things I could actually buy, let's talk about what the impossible watches would be if I could just write the check from somebody else's bank account. First, Patek Philippe 5236P, and let's go with the Dash 10. Okay, so this is a version of a watch that originally came out 2 years prior, so 41.3 millimeters platinum. The original had a lovely satin-grained blue fade dial that was a little bit difficult to read. Cue the 2023 salmon dial, and all is forgiven. Now with the salmon dial, still with the inline calendar, but with blackened white gold hands and indices, it is as easy to read the time on this version as it is to read the calendar. I loved the original. I love this. This would be my choice, but it costs much money at $141,400. The movement is worth the price of admission. It's gorgeous, but that's a lot of cash. Now, granted, inflation and whatnot, you can't buy as many houses as you used to for $141,000, but it's still very possible. That's a lot of money to sink into a single timepiece. Would I do it? Yes. Could I do it? No. All right. Brian Ackerman in the box saying, you don't get to borrow anything in the 1916 inventory, Tim? I just assumed. No, I am against borrowing watches or the pageantry of wearing a watch I don't own. Could I? Probably. Would I? It's not me. If you see something on my wrist, it's going to mean it's mine. What else going on in the box? Sean Hansen jumping in. We got the ghost of Yiddish Gambino finally watching live. Interesting handle there. Mason1 saying the inline date Patek is very nice, but out of my price range. Well, that goes for both of us. And then we've got Mr. BS saying, hey, Tim, happy to catch you live. Soma R saying, beautiful, but my exit Patek would be the 5270J. That's a good choice. All right. Then we have Jeff S. saying, if you don't own it, don't wear it. It's a little bit like wearing the world champion's rainbow jersey as a cyclist if you're not the champion, or wearing the team kit if you're not on the team. I've just got a block against it, and I feel the same way about a watch I don't own. Now, watch I've plotted to buy many times, but still can't quite make happen, and that despite the fact that my company owns the company. De Bethune DBD, the DB Digital, originally launched and built in only about 39 pieces in 2006. Now, if you want to find one of these today, it's going to be between $90,000 and $150,000, depending on whether you're buying the new version, which does not have a moon phase and is in base metal, or the original version, which does have a case-back moon phase and is in either white gold or rose gold. Well, early white gold with the moon phase, that one you see right there, that would be my choice. It's a dramatic piece with an inline calendar and a jump hour, plus a case-back spherical moon phase, and I love everything about it. But for 150 grand, I just can't conscience the amount of money. Could I swing it? Maybe if I sell a kidney. Could I do it and still feel like I would build out a well-rounded collection? Obviously, I couldn't. Also, there's something about wearing a watch that expensive. If you got robbed, even if it were insured, you may never be able to get another just because they're so rare. Whereas if you spread your money around a little bit, at least the day after you get ripped off, you still have a watch on the wrist. So, Chronometry Ferdinand Berthoud FB1R6. So this was their regulator. This is a model that was absolutely perfect for me because it's a lugless watch that, though 44 millimeters, wears super compact. And it is a deadly gorgeous movement. COSC chronometer, fusee and chain constant force device, power reserve indicator, and a huge tourbillon. If we could go back to the prior image too, not only does it have a tourbillon, but it also has running center seconds, which is very rare. And the case, just like a Zin with tegament steel, is carburized or carbon diffused, which means that the steel of this watch is as hard as ceramic, and thus it is almost impervious to scratches. Now, the original FB1 from Ferdinand Berthoud won the GPHG Aiguidor in 2016, and for good reason. It really shows. This is a watch that I love on every level, and when I first saw it at the SCHH, back when we had that, I thought if I could ever justify emptying the tank for a watch, it would be for this. For just that one watch, it would almost be worthwhile. Well, the regulator came out in 2019. It's still a dream watch of mine, but at $241,000 in 2018, even if they go for a little bit less than that today, it's still far beyond my grasp. So, Charles Frodsham double impulse chronometer. From England, the best of British, a company that's been making clocks and watches since 1839, and in conjunction with Derek Pratt, one of the greatest unsung watchmaking heroes of all time, they created this, the double impulse chronometer that came out in 2018. That is the version with the porcelain dial and the 22 karat, yes, 22 karat yellow gold dial. Now, they also offer a dial version with royal ciphers because they are a supplier to the monarchy. The movement has a double direct impulse escapement. Via Pratt's work, it's not just a natural escapement a la Breguet with no Swiss lever, but the double direct impulse escapement actually has two separate drivetrains and two separate power sources here, which solves one of the problems Breguet could not resolve, which was how to prevent it from stopping and jamming and getting unsynchronized. Look at that balance bridge. Look at the shock protection. Look at that stealthy snailed power reserve indicator at the top, and the fact that every character on the bridges has been freehand engraved. This is the best of British, and I don't just mean watches. Here's the thing. With all due respect to Roger W. Smith, this is really the Great Britain watch for moi. And I would even say that it's worth what they charge for it. The problem is a 5 to 8 year waiting list means you better not be getting up there in years when you sign on the dotted line. I could be in a completely different place in my life in 8 years, and they're only making 12 per year. When they auction, they go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it is both time and cost prohibitive. But what a beautiful dream. Okay, jumping into the box right now, let's see. We are up to 260 concurrent viewers. Guys, help me get to 300 concurrent. That always makes my night. And if we want to get really ambitious, maybe 400. Renside saying, Frodsham, my favorite dial, full stop. Then there's the innards. We've got A and B. Would you consider a crayon? Yes. But I assume you're talking about the wax kind from Crayola, because I couldn't afford a crayon. Those are beautiful watches, though. Remy Mayat is probably the most sophisticated technical watchmaking engineer in the world. And then we've got Jim Mild saying 242 in live views, but only 39 upvotes. That's right, guys. If you're watching, you can upvote, and it really helps me with the algorithms. What else is going on in the box? We have Caliber YQG. Nice to tune in just in time. And then we've got Mr. BS saying, is it me or our most high horology independent watches with dial side movements? Do they seem like some variation of the Breguet tradition, like MB&F's Grubel 4C handmade one, etc.? Well, to be fair, there are other watches with dial side escapement components before the 2005 Breguet tradition, but I do feel like the tradition did it best and was the most influential. What else is going on? We got Ed Blair saying, stop maintaining these flim-flamming cockroaches. Go fast red car, okay, and luxurious vintage cars, spending your children's tuition money. I have no idea what that is all about, but maybe you could explain to us. I would say let's just have fun with this and not take it too seriously, sir. What else is going on in the box? We got Patrick K joining in and Arto Charles, who just upvoted me. Cull Obsidian saying I meant a 50 Fathoms, Milgauss, and a Patek Neptune for Tim. Great restart for the collection. Those are awesome selections, and I like all of them. And the Nifty 50 might be on my list tonight. I don't know if I could swing a Neptune. Prices are still reasonable, but they're going up. So, wrist shots, number 2. We're finally there. Ed K celebrates the first night of Lunar New Year with his black dial steel JLC Master Ultra Thin Moon Phase, a great modern Jaeger LeCoultre. Neil S. and his granddaughter keep time and each other's company. Jens F. from Hamburg, Germany, rides the train with his Eterna Kontiki GMT World Timer. Great to see a low-profile brand. James F. and his Omega Railmaster visit Kampong Kelang in Cambodia, a fishing village. Luca L. shares his lovely salmon sunray dial Carte Pasha 2324. Guys, keep them coming. Monday mailbag at the 1916company.com to see your analog on my digital. And then we have Jacques Cousteau, who is saying the watch market is dead. You must be talking about the other watch market, because we are doing well. The United States was one of the few growth markets in the world last year. The US was up 5% for the year. The world was down 2.8%. Of United States dealers, not all were equally fortunate. We were one of the best. And I'm happy to say that back when I took a job at Watch You Want in 2014, I picked the right horse. What else is going on here? We got BNS saying, Tim, you finally made it because trolls are on your channel. I know, I feel big time, right? And then we got Mark S., Robert Wood joining in from Austin, Texas, and Joseph D. Welcome to all. THX 1138 saying the USA represents. That is right. We have topped China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, and the UK as the #1 national market for watches. Represent. Were I to rebuild my watch collection, all right, now we return to the quasi-real world of things I could actually own. I want a chronograph, I want a Zenith, I want a perpetual calendar, I want a travel watch, an alarm, a dress watch, and some kind of bracelet sports watch. I want a 50 Fathoms, and I want a jump hour. How can I consolidate all these things into 5 or 6 different references? Well, let's see how I do. First, I don't need a vintage watch. I think every collection should have one, but I have my grandpa's 1973 Seamaster DeVille, his retirement watch, and I've got my 1974 JLC Snowdrop Memovox. So on the vintage front and the heirloom front, I am complete. Let's start with something that ticks a whole bunch of those boxes. The Zenith Grand Chronomaster XXT Quantième Perpetuel. Now, an oversized watch from the Terry Nataf era of Zenith is always going to be divisive. That is not remembered as a golden era for the company, and a lot of people resent the direction Nataf took the brand, particularly with the Day-Fi Extremes. That said, there's a lot to redeem this watch as well as the Nataf era. Let me explain what it means to me. Back in 2008, I was at the Walt Whitman Mall looking at watches in the pre-owned cabinet. They had a little display case for watches that were overwhelmingly not brands they sold, things that had been turned in on trade. And I was about to join the Navy. I'd already put in my package to OCS, and I'd just gone down the corridor at the Walt Whitman to get a eye test to submit with my application to the Navy. So I was looking at these watches on the cusp of joining the military, and I didn't want to make any big life or financial decisions back then, and I saw the Chronomaster Open XXT. This was a formative moment in that mall. The watch itself was probably about $7,000 used, 45 millimeters in steel, Zenith El Primero Power Reserve with the open heart dial, which at the time seemed very cool. And I thought to myself, what a watch! Who could possibly deserve such a thing? And this was just a basic power reserve. It wasn't a tourbillon, it wasn't a perpetual calendar chrono, and I was blown away. I put it on my wrist and I couldn't conceive of what I would have to achieve in life to deserve that, even if I could afford it. It made one hell of an impression. I knew that Zenith watches were special, and that Zenith as a manufacturer was something to be regarded, and that the watches were not commonly sold in the US back then, all of which created this mystique and aura to the watch that probably propelled it even higher in my esteem at the time. That era of Zenith, the Chronomaster XXT, the open dials, even the Defy Extremes on some level, is deeply important to me because it was a formative part of my development as a watch collector and enthusiast. And the watch fit better than I expected. You can actually go on Watchbox Reviews, now 1916 Reviews, and see me put that watch on my wrist to get the fit. It fit better than I expected. Was it borderline? Yes. Would I do it? Absolutely. I'm starting to wonder whether the big watch look, and this is not specific to this watch, but just generally, I'm starting to wonder whether the pendulum hasn't just about stopped and started to swing away from the small watch movement and back towards big watches. I don't know if we'll ever get back to this, because 45 versus 40 is what you're looking at right there. But I do think that we might be looking at a comeback of big watches over the next 3 to 5 years. The XXT, by the way, was all substance. Now here's a picture that I found, credit where credit's due, though their hallmark is not great. But this is out of Japan. And you can see how special this watch is. Certified COSC chronometer, white gold case, black dial with white gold hands and indices, perpetual calendar, moon phase, Zenith El Primero. It's got all of that and a display case back. And this was from the Academy line, a very special collection of elite Zenith watches. And it still zings me to this day. Figure around 25,000 if I were to find one. Guys, if you've got a lead on one of these and you've actually found the white gold watch box and papers, let me know. Monday mailbag at the1916company.com. I might just go out and buy it. Hard watch to find. Okay, I've got my Zenith, my chronograph, my perpetual calendar, and my El Primero just like that. So what's next? Well, I want my full bracelet. I'm going with a sports watch and a great one. We talked about it a little bit last week, but the Vacheron Constantin Overseas self-winding, the original, 37 mil, either the 42040 or with the later 1311 movement, it was the 42042. Externally, they're identical, very few changes. But we spoke about this and it bears repeating. This would be my bracelet sports watch of choice. As much as I like the tritium dial, salmon dial, Patek Neptune, I don't believe that's a swimmable watch, whereas at 150 meters, this absolutely is. 37 millimeters by 8.4, it's thin and it's compact. COSC chronometer, the only overseas ever to be a chronometer, and with a fine Girard Perregaux caliber, it was also a hacking seconds movement, something the current in-house self-winding is not. 150 meters, more than I'll ever need. Top of the line bracelet, beautifully contoured and finished externally, mirror polished internally, as solid as a battleship anchor. Fit is beyond perfect. It looks good. Not too big, not too small, ideal on my wrist, and yes, it'll fit under a cuff. The Gen 3 Overseas feels like a Royal Oak Offshore by comparison. Salmon dials, brown dials, blue dials, and military dials. Sigma dials and tritium dials. Many choices. Pick the one you love most. This might be the one for me, but that brown Sigma dial, that also has allure, doesn't it? Go with this one if you want maximum lume. $12,000 to $15,000 for the best one in the world with full box papers and set, and probably no refinishing. This is still a very accessible watch. You're looking at Holy Trinity watchmaking and exclusivity for Rolex money. And that's something that would be hard to pass up. It doesn't come with the baggage of a Royal Oak or an Odysseus or a Nautilus or an Aquanaut. There's so much to love about that first gen Overseas, and the work of Dino Modolo and Vincent Kaufman, inspired by Jörg Heisek. A lot of interesting people had a hand in its creation. So, what else could I recommend to myself? Let's take a quick look at the box and see what you guys are saying. IDK saying Tim's Dream Watch and saying VC Brown Dial again. This is a different VC Brown Dial. When I talk about the Overseas Brown Dial, I usually mean the Generation 3. This is a different matter. The Gen 3 is a different class as an investment than the first gen with the Brown Dial. Muhammad Ali saying VC's Overseas Blue Dial, one and done. Dr. Kevin Moore saying I have the same size wrist as you, Tim. 42 to 45 is my sweet spot. THX loves that Zenith, and I got to agree. What else is going on? We have Mark S. saying Tim's vocal range rivals Mike Patton's. Well, I would never claim to have a great vocal range, mostly deep, but occasionally a little bit higher in a falsetto, I wouldn't consider it sustainable. So in other words, I'm never going to be replacing Adam Lambert in the Queen lineup for their next tour. What else is going on? Joseph, good to see you in the box, saying Zenith, total sleeper brand. See you soon, Tim. I will. And Joseph, I've got your article done. I think you're going to be very happy with it. Barry asking, when will the Newport Beach location be opening? Grand opening party, you better believe it. Follow our website where we have all locations. Also, reach out to our existing Newport Beach location in Fashion Island. They could probably give you a day of the grand opening. What else is going on in the box? Darius saying solid gold G-Shock square for a beater, Tim. I actually reviewed that watch, so check out my review of it. No, not for me. I think a G-Shock should always be plastic, rubber, and a metal case back, and that's that. What else is in the box? Does Adam Lambert have Tim's watch knowledge? Probably not, but with his money, he's probably got a better collection. All right. Jumping back in now, Ulysse Nardin Sonata Cathédrale, a watch that was originally launched in 2003, but in 2005 it gained a couple of things that I consider essential. First, this dial. Second, a display case back. And third, cathedral gongs that encircle the movement 1.5 times rather than a regular minute repeater gong, which is just once. 42 millimeters white gold, a GMT with 24-hour distinction, and plus-minus pushers on either side of the case that allow you to quickly adjust to the local time zone. You have two different ways of setting the alarm. You can set it in a 24-hour format, so it knows the difference between 12 noon and 12 midnight, for example, or you can set it in countdown mode if you want it to count down, say, 3.5 hours. Very few alarm watches offer you that. It also has an off switch for the alarm if you want to disarm it even though it is wound. I would say that the repeater is probably the most sonorous ever created, as it has a conventional strike governor, which you can see at about 7:45 on the dial, and it is a centrifugal strike governor like a minute repeater to slow down the chimes. Plus it has those cathedral gongs, so though it is chiming as an alarm, it has the tonal qualities of a minute repeater. Fit is surprisingly good on my wrist. It's not too broad, it's definitely not too thick at around 13 millimeters thick. It's big, but not too big for me. As you can see, the lugs are not over the edge of my wrist. For $26,000 to $27,000 pre-owned with full box papers and no refinishing, it's a compelling option. One of the coolest watches UN ever made, and truly the minute repeater of alarm watches. The fact that it is also loomed, automatic, low key, because it's not yellow gold, rose gold, a prominent brand, and reasonably priced, as it's just a little bit more than a steel Yachtmaster 2. This watch has everything going for it. Jumping into the box, Baruch Spinoza joining in. Good to see him. We've got Mr. Paradigm 1981. Glad watches like this exist and people are getting creative, but not for me. Understandable. Not everyone loves that 2000s UN aesthetic. By the way, I'm doing an interview with the GM of UN tomorrow, so watch for my interview with Matthew Haverland very soon. And then Baruch asking, how do you know these old watches aren't refinished? You get familiar with what an unrefinished example looks like, and then you check things like lug fluting. Those are usually the first things to go. And then Danny saying, it's huge. It's big, but it's not huge. I know, I've seen it in the last couple of days. And then we've got guys chatting with each other, which I love. Mark asking, how's the azimuth Mr. Rubato? I love it. I'm just rotating through my watches right now. I'm wearing my Sartori Biard SB04. This is the one that I designed, so it's getting some love. Wrist shots number 3, Gus G of Athens, Georgia, dazzles with his Tissot PRX Ice Blue on a deluxe rubber strap to match. Looking good. Abdul R of Germany visits Albania, overlooking the river with his vintage Arlaska, yes, Arlaska, not Alaska, cushion case. Check it out. Gradient fade dials. There is nothing new under the sun in the watch industry. Mike G and his Rolex Submariner watch the Packers play the Bears, an action shot. Edward P from San Diego watches the rippling river with his Casio G-Shock. Calvin D and his Manta SkyQuest, by the way, an American domestic brand, prepare to service a friend's grandpa's Elgin. That is very neat. It's always great to see guys who've got real bench time out in the world. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com to see your passion in this fashion. If I were to rebuild my watch collection, let's see, how many people are watching? Oh my gosh, we got up to 366. Guys, This is face-melting viewership for a non-SIHH, non-Watches and Wonders, non-Basel, non-Rolex show. Help me get up to 400 and you will have made my week, truly. You will also have ensured that this show will be a success on the internet. We're not slowing down with my collection rebuild, so the shopping spree continues with Patek Philippe. Now this one's a bit more speculative than the others, but the Patek Philippe 5070J shouldn't be my kind of watch. It's huge, it's yellow gold, and I'm not a big fan of movement case size disparities, which this vintage La Manna caliber absolutely has in a 42mm case. I've said that yellow gold and big watches don't mix, and this watch is both. It's also really expensive, and verges on the Grail watch territory we agreed to forego for this main Tim Mosso collection. So let's say I could get it for $70,000, and I'm going to collect less expensive watches to flesh out the rest of the collection. Things that cost between $2,000 and $5,000, but I make this the centerpiece. So choosing this watch would mean seriously paring back the ambitions of the rest of the collection, but that's okay. The watch needs a company in the catalog that can be water resistant or shock resistant or anti-magnetic, because this is a dress watch. So this would leave money for my Ball Engineer 2 Magneto S. So what is there to recommend the 5070 against all of those traits that I normally consider to rule a watch out? Well, first, it fits. It just about fits. At 48.5 lug to lug, just under 12 millimeters thick and 42 in diameter, it makes the cut on my wrist. Here's the clincher. When I had an example, and this is one of those pure moments of emotional resonance and connection that convinced me I love this thing. Against all my reservations and better judgment, I held a mini photo shoot with the watch when I had it. So you could see picture number 1, picture number 2, picture number 3, and picture number 4. The finer things in life. This is something I've only done once or twice in 10 years, so that's saying something about my feelings toward this watch. A really special watch, and for once, even though there are platinum and rose gold and white gold versions, this is the one I want. Back in the box, guys, you are making my day with these views. We got Mark S. saying Omega is good value. Baruch Spinoza saying, didn't Patek make a 50mm chrono like it in the 30s? They made about a 46mm version of it in the 50s. I think you're thinking about the 2512. And that's in their factory museum. It's a split second. Doc asking, Tim, what's your opinion of the Patek 5085 Neptune? If you like the look, I can't argue against it. It's a very cool watch and uncommon. Plus, it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than a 5712. What else is going on? Well, guys, we just about hit 400. We're at 381. Stay with me. We're going to have 400 concurrent viewers. You will make me happy and probably my mom too. Blancpain's 50 Fathoms is something I've loved for a long time. You guys called this shot. It was in the chat box. Now it's on your screen. The 45mm 5015 works on my wrist, only just. I don't know that I could wear it full time. It would be a weekend watch, a party watch, a true sports watch. And one of my criteria for a diver is that it needs to be versatile. Paradoxically, just like the left-handed relievers in baseball wind up facing a lot of righties, your dive watch, which should be very specialized, winds up being your all-the-time watch. So my dive watch needs to be that. I will say the 5015 is short across the wrist and light in this titanium form, which makes it wearable, but I've always had my doubts about it. Never totally at ease with the fit. So last year's debut, the 42.3mm 5010, works much better. There it is right there. 2.5mm shorter lug to lug, smaller all around, and feels like the difference is more than that. Mechanically, they are identical. There's caliber 1315, and that means both are excellent. Look at those bevels. Look at that triple finished rotor. Look at the snailing across the bridges. These are the best machine-laid bevels I've ever seen on a production watch. AP needs to take notes about how you make machine-laid bevels look that clean, mirrored, and rounded, because APs are gross and clearly bit by a wheel. This is just, well, frankly, it could fool you if you didn't know to look for those rounded off edges at the periphery of the bridge. I would also say 5 days of power reserve and 3 barrels, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, 6 position adjustment, and free sprung for shock resistance. This movement has it all. Lume is world class, and because the whole bezel is covered by sapphire to protect the lume, the whole bezel can be lumed. The bezel pearl, 15, 30, 45, and all the 5-minute increments. Super luminescent, and all three hands, which is critical. A new titanium 5010 today costs $18,400. However, pre-owned discounts significantly reduce your damage, and they're already available on watches that are still covered by warranty, because remember, this just came out last year. That's probably the direction I would take unless an AD absolutely blew me away on a discount for a new watch, but what a machine. So, jump hours. I would love a jump hour and a retrograde, or a watch that never needs to be refinished, but could one watch offer all three? This is where I'm going to throw you for a bit of a loop, a split-fingered fastball down the middle that just drops out of the zone. Because I am so done with scratches and refinishing as a watch collector and as a person who sees a lot of watches, in 2016, Chanel got close. Yes, Chanel got close. They launched its, well, this is Chanel's horlogerie line for men, the Monsieur de Chanel. And the watch was beautiful, 40 millimeters with a retrograde and jump hour, designed expressly for men and with a mechanical movement. This checks most of my boxes, but colored gold and the vulnerability of gold to scratches, scuffs, and dents, not quite in my wheelhouse until the 2019 Edition Noire that really caught my eye as something I would actually buy and wear. Remember, Chanel is not a group, it's family held. So this is not Richemont, this is not Swatch, this is not LVMH. This is something very special run by people who are they're custodians of the brand, and they are good stewards. So this is a watch that is 55 pieces, limited edition, made of ceramic, 42 millimeters in diameter, just under 11 thick, featuring a movement benefiting from significant involvement of Chanel affiliate, the partially owned Romain Gaultier. Officially, Gaultier just supplied the wheels. But at SIHH, the Romain Gaultier people laughed at the claim that Gaultier's only contribution was to make the wheels of this watch. Chanel later admitted that Gaultier's contribution extends to almost every single moving part of that caliber 1. That is, the balance, the wheels, the pinions, the roulage, everything that goes into it. That's basically a Romain Gaultier movement in a Chanel ceramic watch. I would also say it's an interesting watch from a technical standpoint. Specs include twin barrels, manual wind, a 3-day power reserve, a 4 Hz beat rate, a free-sprung balance, and a full balance bridge for toughness. It is a quasi-sports watch, 50-meter water resistance, and the retrograde minutes and jump hour. There's a granular frosted black dial here that features a surprisingly long retrograde arc, nested small seconds, and an octagonal frame. If we can go to this dial, that octagonal frame for the hour recalls the shape of Chanel's perfume bottle caps. So there's a lot of little nods and winks, plus the inline array of the hours, minutes, and seconds makes this a unique type of regulator that also has bilateral symmetry. What do I not like? Well, I don't necessarily love the text between 5 o'clock and 3 o'clock, but everything else is superb. Chanel has GNF Chatelain in-house, so the quality of the scratch-defeating black ceramic is going to be industry-leading and world-class. Remember, Chatelain makes cases and bracelets and clasps. Bigger, I have to admit, than the original 40 millimeter, the Monsieur de Chanel Edition Noire is 42 millimeters in diameter, but only 10.9 millimeters thick, and it has cropped case flanks underneath the bezel. So the strap is actually countersunk under the bezel, so the fit is superb and the pivot centers are very narrow. Pricing was $27,500 back in 2020, but it's almost certain that some depreciation will have set in. Let's say this is probably going to be between $20,000 and $24,000 if I were to find one pre-owned. And remember, Chanel is now Romain Gaultier, Chanel High Horology, Bell & Ross, GNF Chatelain, FP Journe, Romain Gaultier, and MB&F. This is an impressive quiver of high-end brands, and they really care about the quality of their watchmaking. you can rest assured that this watch is backed by a company that will always be around to provide parts and service. So, where does that leave us? If I were to skip the 5070 Patek, which I probably have to, that gets me right to the door of $100,000 with 5 watches out of this speculative collection. So basically everything except the Patek. Given the half dozen I routinely wear already, that's an 11-watch collection, not including my pocket watch, which is from Illinois, and I've got spectacular quality, diversity, and ability to cover all scenarios, needs, bases, and desires. I'm very satisfied with these choices. So guys, wrist shots number 4. Let's see your choices. Gus from Athens, Georgia. He's back in the box with his new Chris Ward 12. Looking good, my man. Tim P. enjoys a drive in his Lexus alongside the Breitling Super Ocean Heritage Diver. We have Nicholas C., who reports from Dubai with his Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Ultra Thin Moon. Shamal D., longtime supporter, showcases his classic Chrono Swiss regulator in cuffed fashion. That's a pure wrist shot there. And Michael V. takes us home with the Rolex Submariner at the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Send your wrist shots to MondayMailbag at the1916company.com to see your watch in this box and your wrist on my list. Thanks to all, one and all. This was a spectacular show. We hit 407 concurrent. My week is made. Thanks to you, thanks to Nick, and until next time, time out.